Welcome to Terra Talks, where we talk about all things real estate. In each episode, we'll tackle current trends and topics of interest, both locally and regionally. However or wherever you decide to tune in, you're not going to want to miss this.
Welcome. I'm here with Ryan Devaux from Terra, St Lucia, and we're going to chat a little bit about the market. Ryan, tell me, what's going on in St Lucia?
Well, we have, I think, coming out of COVID, we saw a big boom, as I think most of the islands saw. There's been, somewhat of a slowdown to that, but at those were record levels. But I think there's still a healthy demand, for real estate in general. I would say we've seen a change, from certainly at the villa level, where historically we had, a decent mix of US, British clientele. And we've seen now, more focus towards North America. So US and then Canadian investors as well.
Okay, so a high intake in those buyers.
Yeah, and some, some level of slowdown with regard to the, British investors buying in St Lucia.
What would you say is the biggest hurdle a buyer might face buying in St Lucia?
I suppose at the moment I would say it's, if you're not a St Lucian or CARICOM resident, then we have an alien land holdings process.
Okay.
At the moment, that process is somewhat backlogged, so it's,
takes a bit of time.
up to about 4 months.
Okay.
It's a due diligence process, etc. But it is required to buy if you're non-St Lucian, non-CARICOM. So at the moment, I would say that is probably one of the biggest hurdles when I think about our agreements, current agreements, how we drafted them, and how you're timing the close. Bank financing for those that do require financing has historically been somewhat slow, but I think there are a few players in the market now that are servicing financing needs quite well. Some of our regional banks that have moved in are streamlining their processes. So by and large, the financing, including for foreign buyers, generally at 60-40, 40% equity coming in, then there's financing available. So, and that can generally be sorted out sooner than the alien land holdings. Okay.
On average, when I put an offer in on a house in St Lucia and the offer is accepted, how long will it take to close?
Well, historically we had typically 90-day closes.
Okay.
But as I say, with where we're seeing now, 4-month alien land holdings, we're going to 120 days, and then with a clause that if required, we'll extend, if it's related to the alien land holdings process.
Okay.
Bigger villas and so on, may go longer than that. Sometimes it's, it has to do with tax year ends for the clients, and they don't want to close until after. So you may see, some longer periods, but those are normally for specific reasons. And then, at that level, normally the buyer is a sophisticated, the seller. So, there's a common understanding, and then we may see longer than the 4 months. Okay.
And what would you say is a benefit to buying in St Lucia as a foreign investor or someone local?
I guess if I start with a foreign investor, St Lucia, I think from a value proposition point of view, is still, if I look at the average price of, the square footage being sold, I don't know the specific number for Barbados, but, in St Lucia, it is lower than I think, than for
average.
Example, of Barbados. Natural beauty, St Lucia, we're a very mountainous island, so I think there's some beautiful vistas, available for the pricing, again. And then I think otherwise, I think there's an opportunity there that St Lucia's story perhaps hasn't been told as well as it could have been, or, I think we have work to do. To try and bring up the values, as I say, when you look at comparative real estate through the region, whether it's Barbados, it's even Grenada, for what you get in St Lucia, I think you get, good value.
Good value for money, good potential.
Yeah.
Is foreign exchange an issue in St Lucia?
No, absolutely not. We're very fortunate. Our Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, which we've had our EC dollar pegged to the US dollar for now, I think almost close to 50 years.
Wow.
there is absolutely,
Totally
you
stable.
can walk in with an EC check if you sell a home for $1 million and just cash it into US and wire it out immediately. There's no permission required, there's no
That's
approvals. So yeah, in that regard, our foreign exchange market within the Eastern Caribbean and the EC dollar in particular has worked very well for us.
Okay. And if there was something the government of St. Lucia could do to make the process easier for you or for the buyer, what would it be?
Again, I think it's that closing time and process, right? The alien land holdings for a non-St. Lucian. I happen to know that when we set it all up, the goal was for 2 weeks for that process, and with the intention that if someone made a false declaration with regard to their background and so on, then the government would simply acquire the land.
Okay.
Which I think is a fair thing, if you've intentionally, not presented the truth. So I think that's a process that could be really improved, and that would, greatly enhance the closing process.
Yeah.
For the market in St. Lucia.
Okay. What is one commercial trend you're seeing in the market?
Commercial trend. I guess we continue to see. We have the recent just breaking ground of what we call the Pope site or the Rodney Bay Commercial Center, which is going to be a new mall up in the north.
Okay, great.
We already have 2 malls there, so you have 3 now within a couple miles, or mile and a half. So you can continue to see that development up in the north in Rodney Bay. At the same time, within Castries, there is a niche clientele that continues to really like Castries. It is a hub for business from all over the island. Our court system is still there, a lot of the government offices, and so on. So you still have an important. It's an important commercial hub, and so there's still a demand for Castries real estate.
Okay.
And you see some of the older buildings being torn down now and being redone, and we have a new halls of justice being built. So there's some significant projects happening in Castries, that it'll continue to be an important center. But you're now seeing that movement north, and then even further south into the cul-de-sac valley, which is we have tunnels through to that valley. You're seeing further development there, which was always the intent, but it's now, it's now coming alive, and you're seeing new things being built, and that's commercial, as Castries now, moves south. So yeah, overall, there are quite a few, big projects. We're hearing of labor shortages and, not enough people to handle, the projects and so on, which I think is indicative of, hopefully a fairly strong economy and a good.
And what about a residential trend?
Residential trend, I think at our domestic market level, we don't have enough homes. We need more homes for, the average St. Lucian to be able to afford a home, have a home. I think there's opportunity there. We're beginning to see like some condo type properties being built for the local market, which is something totally new.
Right.
So that's an interesting development. And then too, I would say at the villa end, if you come up, to that segment of the market, again, we perhaps don't have enough modern stock. A lot of our villas are older and so on.
Historical homes.
I think, there's room there for new modern villas as well. Obviously, we have the Cabot Golf project up in the north, which has been a transformative product in terms of, the type of clientele it's attracting and so on. So that's an interesting development for St. Lucia.
Okay.
The golf course, which is already finished, is world class.
Yeah.
And is attracting, a level of clientele we haven't seen before. And the reviews are, outstanding. So yeah, that's interesting. And I think even too, some of the recent sales we've seen in and around like the Rodney Bay area, we're seeing, price lift just from the demand now for what exists. Yeah. And I would suggest, probably a reduction in supply now with the demand. So
that's great. So outlook for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think, as I say, in our space, we get to, we do the villa rental side as well, which is, short-term and long-term rentals. So we're seeing, we are placing a lot of personnel right now coming in for construction projects, project managers, which is telling me and telling us that I think, we see a fair number of new projects coming on stream. The whole Rodney Bay area is going to be rebuilt with 3 hotels.
Wow.
Mount Pimard has already started. That's at the south end of the Rodney Bay beach. That's a huge project up on the hill. And then there are other projects planned. So we're seeing, as I say, people coming in
Investing.
and ground being broken and the start of what I think looks like, a fairly high level of construction activity for the years ahead. We also had, last quarter, we had 4 developers come in to talk to us about, condo type properties, which I have to admit in the last few years was the first time we've had those discussions. I mean, none have moved forward now to, as yet breaking ground, but they are, working on business models. They've been coming back, refining, looking at pricing in the markets.
Essentially bringing a whole new product to the market.
Yes, I mean, some of these are, we do have some condos in around the marina in particular, but now, that space is fully utilized. So now beginning to move up into the hills in and around to do these developments. But, just refining their business cases. So I think the fact that, you have people coming to the table now, again, is a positive indicator of hopefully what's coming,
Absolutely.
And I continue to say, I mean, the Caribbean is a beautiful place to live, to be in the world. We're still relatively safe when you look at, the wars going on globally and so on. So I think the value of our region is, again, we just need to tell that story, and try to continue.
To the world.
Bringing people to invest,
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ryan. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Pleasure to be here.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, so much for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.
If you want to find out more about St. Lucia or any of our territories, feel free to tune into all of our channels, our websites, terra.com, and our socials.